joining you here today from Richmond, Texas. It's about 85 degrees outside, along with winds of about 7 miles per hour. Inflation has caused panic among many levels of the economy. It has caused families and bachelors to have to overcome many financial challenges. How big of an issue do you believe inflation has become in the United States? I'm here with Lola representing the Democratic side and Adeze representing the Republican side.
All right, thanks for having me. Great question. Inflation is one of the US's greatest issues currently, and many Americans would actually agree with this, according to the Pew Research. Though the Republicans claim to agree with this, their plan for combating inflation is one that'll benefit the rich and only pump more money into the economy, worsening inflation.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm Adeze Udolisa and I'm representing the Republican side. And I, as a Republican, have been overcome with a wave of anger over the current inflation predicament. Thank you for your question. I personally believe inflation is so significant to foreign affairs issues and military spending issues. However, inflation has largely affected Americans across the nation. I think it continues to negatively affect us because we're leaving it in Democratic hands. Legislation such as the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, which imposes an alternative minimum tax of 15% of the average annual adjusting financial statement income of domestic corporations, which does not seem promising in curing our financial concerns. As Republicans, we call to repeal for this Democratic plan due to its failure to address our economic issues. We don't see this plan helping in time before the election period, which gives us confidence in taking the House and Senate. In this case, we aim to continue expired provisions of the Trump tax cuts and repeal the Inflation Act. Democrats have doubts about our plan, expressing that it would make the wealthy wealthier and eliminate Medicare and student loans for the working class. However, Democrats have proposed their ideas for a reduction of inflation have greatly failed. It's our turn now. They fail to see inflation is solely the outcome of government spending, and Trump's plan tackles just that.
The working class and the middle class seem to have been hit harder with the growing issue of inflation than the upper class. What are your thoughts about the working class, and do you believe that we should support them or employers in times like these?
I believe we should support the working class for sure. This also brings me back to my previous statement regarding the Republicans' plan to combat inflation. The economy we live in supports the top 1% and the wealthy, meanwhile, the working class struggles. This is why we should make them our top priority when it comes to inflation.
I have a question for Americans. Could you afford to give up 1 month of your monthly wages? 95% of Americans say no. Well, 1 month makes up 8.3% of your overall year, and inflation is higher than that. The working class is provided with generous financial aid and amenities that have increased government spending to an all-time high. Biden's American Rescue Plan took $1.9 trillion, only making inflation worse. So I believe we should support causes for sacrifice. While Democrats have shown concerns for spending cuts, shrinking social welfare, such as Medicaid and Social Security, this is the best way to improve the inflation state of government that we're currently in.
The government has taken many actions and has responded to this issue in various ways by passing different bills and laws and by posing certain measures. How do you believe the government should control or curb this issue? What laws do you believe have been rightfully passed or should be passed in the near future?
Democrats and the government have actually already started to put things into play that'll help curb inflation. One of them being raising minimum wage to living wages, which the Republicans do agree with. Though there are things that the Republicans do not agree with, that of which being raising taxes against the rich and making it easier for the working class to join unions. The Republicans are actually proposing that we do budget cuts to things such as Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, which isn't fair considering that inflation is affecting the working class more than anyone. And they rely on those things. The Democratic Party has actually already proposed the Inflation Reduction Act 2022, which has now become a law. And this act will combat inflation by investing in clean energy and clean corporations, and it will bring down the budget deficit and excess demand. And this will reduce the inflation pressure. This act will also reduce the deficit by more than $300 billion over the next decade.
Thank you for your question. As stated before, the way to tackle inflation head on is to reduce government spending, which Democrats are apparently failing at. For example, take the Supreme Court case West Virginia versus the Environmental Protection Agency, which ruled that the EPA didn't have authority to regulate greenhouse emissions. Under the Clean Air Act, it allocates $87 million to ensure reduction in greenhouse air emissions. Seeing as environmental issues are so high up on the agenda for Democrats at such expensive costs makes us lose hope for the future of inflation in their hands. Biden has increased national debt at greater yields than President Trump. The excessive spending has to stop.